Thank you. We're out. Tuesday night.
Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you all.
Goodness.
This is Simon Reeve, but I didn't need to tell you that, did I? How amazing was that video? Normally when people say, do you want to look at my holiday videos or photos? I say, no, you're all right. But that just gives us a taste of your extraordinary career and your travels. What does it feel like seeing that back? Do you think, I can't believe I did all that?
It feels a bit surreal, actually. It feels like somebody else from a different time. And I'm a bit younger in some of those shots. And I think especially now, after this period we've had, my goodness, it feels a bit bizarre to see it up there. But if I think about it, and if I focus on each moment, I can honestly project myself back into each and every clip in a really emotional, in the moment sort of way. I can be there right back in this. I've always got that stock of memories somewhere locked away in my brain that I can dive back into. For a bit of travel, it's up here.
On the way here tonight, I did do research before tonight, before you all panic. But on the way here tonight...
When you're on the tube...
I read something about you. And someone said he's a mixture of Michael Palin and Ross Kemp. How do you feel about that?
I think I would take that very positively. I was thinking, that's pretty good. I think it could be a lot worse. I mean, I think they've both been pretty good at what they do, and to have a mix of that, yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to find out your source, and it wasn't, somebody in a PR department somewhere, but yeah, I'd take that as a quote.
No, I like that, because I suppose what I feel that does, I'm not saying it sums you up, but you do have the quality that Michael Palin has, which is that you don't have that sort of arrogant Western entitlement, really, when you go into places, and you get stuck in, like Ross Kemp.
Well, I hope so, in the sense that, I learned a lot from watching Michael Palin. When I say learn a lot, I don't mean as a TV presenter. I think I just learned a lot about us collectively out there and how to think of foreigners and foreign places. As somebody who didn't travel, who didn't have any experience of really, when Lord Michael was first on, he was a window for me into the outside world. And, I have to acknowledge, I suppose, actually, that I meet people now in places like this around the country who have said to me, they've come up to me and they've said, I've never left this country and you're sort of traveling out there for us. And it gets me so much, because the privilege, the honor, the responsibility as well. But yeah, I'd be delighted to be mentioned in the same paragraph on the same page as Michael Palin. And, Ross Kemp is very good at what he does. He really invests in it. He really is. He's very good with his team. I work with a cameraman who also works with him, and
it's quite scary, though.
They really put their all into it. And so does Ross.
We're going to talk about Journeys to Impossible Places, your fabulous book. You'll be very relieved to hear. We are going to talk about it. But before we delve into it, I guess I just want to get a sense of your superhero origin story, the early days of Simon. And I've read your brilliant book, Step by Step. So I do have a sense that you weren't from a kind of globe-trotting family. Travel wasn't really part of your life when you grew up, was it?
Not at all, no. So I'm from West London. I grew up in a very ordinary family, loving, caring, pretty nuclear in a sense. Me and my brother and mum and dad. And we didn't go on exotic foreign holidays at all. Our holidays year after year were to Wareham in Dorset and Studland Beach in Studland Bay, which some people here I'm sure will know. It's a beautiful part of the world. I have no regret or gripe about it whatsoever. It was very comforting to go actually there and meet we always used to try and squat near the Partridge family's beach hut. They had a beach hut there, and we could occasionally get a brew up on Les and Rosemary's gas cooker, that sort of thing. And that was what we did. And people didn't travel, of course, the way they do now. I remember when the first kid in our school when I remember well when he said, I'm going to Spain this year on holiday. And we were like, whoa, Spain. We had no idea really where it was or what it was. But that was the sort of advent of modern mass tourism when people like us were able to go away. But of course, people have been traveling for centuries and we haven't just invented it. And I was very late to the party, if you like. I wasn't imaginative or creative enough to be sort of stowing away on a plane or interrailing even. I never went interrailing, which I kind of regret now. But yeah, I came to travel a little bit later as an adult, through work, really, and then properly, I would say, through TV, through making the TV programs. And I think that's slightly why I've still got the wide-eyed, oh my gosh, sort of approach to it, because it is genuinely what I feel. And first of all, I feel very lucky to be doing it, so I've still got that sense. I don't feel like, oh God, I'm off to the Congo again. No, I still feel it's incredible, and I really hope I keep that. But I've also got that sense that, I know that this isn't my sort of privilege or it's not my birthright, and so I value it, I think, a little bit more. And I've also got a memory like a goldfish, so by the time I've swung round it once, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm a bit like that.
You had quite a troubled youth, didn't you? And there was a little bit of petty crime and some vandalism. I mean, at the more benign end, it was stealing Kinder eggs. But then there was some other trickier stuff, wasn't it? And I think Kinder eggs were my sort of gateway crime, really. You get away with that and you're off. I'm aware that you've spoken about that really openly, and I think it's good that you have, just because you really did turn your life around. And I guess I want to know, looking back at that period, I tend to think that mostly kids that behave like that, there's kind of fear and anger behind it. What was your particular fear, do you think?
I don't think there was anger so much, or if there was, it was directed at my family, and I was angry with my dad, and we had sort of classic family issues, and so I was working, maybe a little bit of that, but I think there was ego and as much as anything, and an inferiority that I could strike out against by being naughty and holding the school record for nicking Kinder eggs, and then graduating from that to slightly more serious incidents. But I think, I'm still thinking about what you said about how I turned my life around. I'm not suggesting that I was like a sort of a boat without a sail bobbing around on the waters. I agree that I worked hard. I took opportunities when they arose, but I was bloody lucky. I personally never want to forget that, and I don't want other people to either. To think that somehow my innate talent had always been there and it emerged and blossomed. No, I think I was a lucky bloke who was in a couple of right places, frankly, at the right time, and I think I could very easily have fallen through cracks and not made a decent stab at life, quite frankly, and had a very different life where people would look at me as just a layabout loser, frankly. And I think my point really is, I suppose, that luck plays such a massive part in the lives of all of us. But don't imagine, of course, and I know you don't, but don't imagine that people who are successful haven't got there, at least in large part, I would say, by just, the roll of the dice that life is. And likewise, when people don't make it, people who have fallen through cracks, I think I'm much more sympathetic for them, because I know I could have been there. I know that could have been me. But so was I working through anger? Probably just at my dad. I was going on ego. It massaged my ego and gave me more confidence to start carrying a knife, to be honest, and to then start carrying a blank firing gun. Yes, it did. It was a boost to me when I felt fragile and pathetic, and it made me feel a bit more of a bloke as even a young teenager, growing up in a tricky part of London, where of course, and I'm not suggesting that young men are the greatest risk by any means, but it's a scary place to be when you're emerging, when you're growing up in a part of London where the police aren't constantly patrolling the streets. And I felt fear more than anger, and I reacted against that by being a bit naughty and trying to earn my spurs that way and find my place in the local area and in my family and community, I suppose.
And you literally sort of came back from a bridge. You were standing on a bridge and deciding whether to jump, essentially. And I guess I want to ask you, it makes me feel a bit emotional thinking about it, actually, but what would you say to that boy now?
I mean, I've been asked this a lot, and it's a lovely question to be asked. And thank you for caring enough to react to it, because you're going to set me off as well. Poor little me. I was in a bad way, I really was. So I flunked out of school, and I can feel myself back there in the hall, sitting down to do the exam and just being overwhelmed with it. I still can tap back into those feelings, like through a portal. And I got up and I walked out of school. I never went back, and I was totally lost. I mean, I had no job, no qualifications, no ambitions. Nobody was gifting me a path in life, and I didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do. And I bounced down right to the bottom. And I think in many ways, the reason that I've done this book is because I tapped into that for, as ridiculous as it sounds, the first volume of my autobiography, where I did talk about it in that. I'm sorry, I haven't talked about this on the stage before, but if it was ridiculous to have written another book about me. But I tapped into it for that book. I was really affected by how people reacted to it, and I was really humbled, frankly, by the way people came up to me and said we were moved and it resonated with us. I thought, okay, well, it's all right for me to talk about these things I've been through and these problems I've had. It's good for people to know that even some D-list bod off the telly, it's not all plain sailing across the water, you know? So, yeah, I was on the edge of a bridge. That is what I bounced down to at one point. I was in a really dark place when I flunked out of school and didn't know what to do. And I think as a society, we're very bad at harnessing the sheer human capital of young guys in particular, I think, who are in that situation, who don't automatically go from school to college or school to a job or school ultimately to university. You know, I was lost. And what would I say? I would say it'll get better. I'll say it'll be all right. I'll say what people said to me at the time. But ultimately, my humble experience, there isn't always something to say. Somebody has to believe it for themselves. And that's the really hard bit for people who love someone who is in the situation I was in, or for someone who is in that situation. You almost have to find that light yourself. You can have it put in front of you. You can have opportunities and suggestions and encouragement and love put in front of you. I had a lot of that. But I think what I would say more than support is I would start putting leaflets and things in front of me and saying, oh, what about this? Have you tried that? We could do this. We could try that. I think that is what I would do. Practical, for me personally, practical works. That step-by-step thing. Go on a walk. I'm trying to compress a lot here, sorry.
Well, talking of going on a walk, you've been on a few, and we should talk about...
Good segue.
I know, I hope it wasn't too tasteless. But yeah.
I've got to say hello to these people, can I remember that?
Oh, yes. He asked me before we came on, he said, can you remind me to do a shout-out? I said, it's not Capital
I'm really
Radio,
worried
it's
that
a
I'm going to forget. I'm going to say hello to everybody. We will swap round. There's a lot of you here. My goodness, it's so lovely you've come out. But I have to say, I'm not going to embarrass too many people, I promise you. But if you're here, Elizabeth Cowell. Hey! Hi, Simon. Really hope you get to read this message. I bought some tickets for the show at the Barbican, and I'm bringing your biggest fan, my 93-year-old mother, Elizabeth Cowell. Oh! Sorry, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, but it's such a lovely message from Andrew, your son, I hope. He says, every time you have a show on TV, she will phone me to tell me Simon's on. I love it. Thank you so much. And look, I'm not going to draw attention to this, but I really want to say thank you to Michael, who, it's going to break me, who emailed me. And Michael, I'm not asking you to identify yourself, but I was really incredibly touched by what you wrote. Michael, if I can, I won't go into details, but I'm 23, I'm from Newcastle, I've been watching your programs for ages. I've just submitted a master's thesis on a country that he saw me in one of my programs really early on. And he says, I'm not sure you'll see this email, but I want to share with you some of the positive impacts that your earliest documentaries still have on young people like myself. As a working class lad from Newcastle, I never even dreamt of going to university. Oh, mate, it got me.
That's so lovely.
His master's thesis. Amazing. All right, I'll recover from that.
We will stop crying at some point, I promise.
Is he? Oh, Michael!
How nice is that?
Why did you know that? That's brilliant. Talk about embarrassing your friend. Thank you. Get him.
Oh, that's so lovely. Are we
Yeah, I think that's it.
okay? We're okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm relatively composed. I'm okay with emotion. You know, I think that as a
I love a
society, we're a bit hopeless about it, you know. I was just about to give some of my sons, why am I saying this? About to give some of my, I'm so excited now, some of my son's clothes to my godson, passing them sort of on. And I was just quickly grabbing them when I was coming up to London yesterday and then unpacking them ready to give them. And I found a pair of his old pants that my wife is trying to give away to our godson. And it's just this tiny pair of pants. And I was like, oh, my son, look at these pants. Oh! I didn't fully blub. Not as much as I did about you, Michael, but it still quite got me.
Journeys to Impossible
Yeah,
Places. This book, I loved this book, and I'm telling you that. I'm often contractually obliged to say I love it, and I don't really, but I genuinely love this, because I think you write so beautifully, and I just feel I've snuck into your suitcase, and I'm with you, and it's so vivid, your description, and you write very personally as well, which I love. It starts during lockdown, which I'm presuming is quite a challenge for a number of reasons for someone who does your job. I was wondering, my dad actually worked in documentaries at the BBC, and I hope you won't take this the wrong way, he was joking. He did once say to me, never marry a foreign correspondent, you can't compete with Colonel Gaddafi. So, do you...
That's an interesting one.
Yeah. Do you find it difficult to adjust to civilian life, I suppose? And how was that? How do you sort of work that, whether it's in lockdown, where this book starts, or just in general?
Yeah, there have been times when we, as a team, have spent a little bit too much time with military types, and then we have started saying civilian life on return. It was quite tough initially, actually. And in a completely mad ego sort of way, the hardest bit for me was going and having these great adventures, going to Somaliland, for example, and then some completely exotic place and having these encounters and tricky situations, and then coming back to Heathrow, and there would be no bunting. And I was sort of like, oh, and I was tempted, do you know where I've just been? That sort of thing. And I had to sort of quite quickly realise, people don't care, Simon. You know, you're just another traveller who's been away and is coming home. It's okay. I'm right, okay. And then I had a few experiences that really brought home to me, you know, normal life is completely fine. It's interesting still. It's exciting. I remember coming home from the Tropics of Cancer series, and the first thing we had to do, even before we had to, could unpack our bags, I had to get down and rod out the sewers. And it was such the most epic bounce down to earth, properly down in the sewers. It was ridiculous. But it was, you know, the reminder that that's normal, that's okay. I deal with the return, I think I pretty well now, I think. My family don't let me, my friends certainly don't let me get too elevated in terms of how they view it or I view it. I go away as a small team as well, and I think that helps. We come back, we go away together, we come back together, we chat about it, we decompress on the way, and then by the time we've returned, normal life takes over, and we're probably planning another journey, except when flipping COVID strikes, of course, and then, like, no doubt a lot of travellers here, we're all subjected to the indignity of having our addiction removed from us and not able to travel again. And yeah, that was pretty tough. I realise other people had it harder, okay?
You go to some extraordinary places here. There are points when you're trying to get through illegally through into Burma, and I'm thinking, Simon, why don't you just go to the Four Seasons and have a week off? But it's interesting because you start, it really made me laugh actually, because you're in Indonesia at the beginning of the book, and there's an incident with a toilet incident, a comfort break incident, which I was actually crying with laughter when I was reading it. Do you want to give us a brief insight into what happened?
Does it involve four-legged creatures? Oh, okay. There've been a few toilet incidents over the years.
It involves pigs.
And I'm remembering what we put in the book.
It involves...
It's in Indonesia. Oh, I think you're all grown-ups. It was a remote island travelling around the equator, as you do, and we arrived on this paradise island. I mean, it was everywhere we would dream of being in the tropics now. I mean, my goodness. And it was a very remote community with very few facilities, shall we say, huts for the people, and a tiny little cupboard of a toilet perched on a rock and slightly jutting out over the sea, so anything that fell out of the toilet would be washed away by the sea. And it looked very rickety, it was a very rickety little toilet. And I thought, I'm not bloody using that. It doesn't look like I would even fit in it, let alone it would stay up. And my insides are normally pretty cast iron, frankly. We've been rather blessed by that on the journeys. But this was not the case on that day. And I had to go to the toilet, and I couldn't make it to the jungle, which was the other option. I had to sort of walk rather quickly, slight little bit of a waddle to this little toilet that was jutting out, and I got the door open. Oh God, I can remember how it creaked. I stepped inside, and there were some kids gathering around behind me who'd sort of called their mates over, and the whole thing properly swayed and shook like this. And there was a hole in the floor of the toilet where business was transacted, and I was getting ready, and I looked down, I realized there was something missing underneath the toilet. There was no sea underneath the toilet to wash away any business. But I've got to go. And I was just getting into position, and I realized because there was no sea, this whole pack of enormous ravenous pigs appeared underneath the toilet. And as if that wasn't bad enough, they didn't stay down there. Their snouts came up through the hole and were snapping at my undercarriage. And while I was trying to avoid this, and the whole toilet was shaking, I thought it was going to fall into the pile of poo. It was horrific. Cross-legged.
That's the best story ever.
Very traumatic. Oh.
I'm sorry to clap the fact that pigs were snapping at your undercarriage. I'm sorry. We should touch on some of your other journeys that don't involve toilets and pigs, but
well, they're the most fun though, aren't they? People always, where'd you go to the loo? Yeah.
I was really interested in your visit to the Sahara because I suppose I realised, quite honestly, how ignorant I am, that we do have this really romanticised view of that region, don't we? And there's the sort of Lawrence of Arabia and, okay, in my case, Sex and the City films, I'm sorry. But, sort of car ads, and it's all seen as very picturesque, and just, that was so fascinating to me, just the political unrest, it's a dangerous area, and you say that that is possibly the most impossible place.
Yeah, I think that's true. Certainly amongst the early journeys I went on. Impossible in the sense that it was ludicrously hot, ludicrously cold at night, very difficult to travel around in, close to Europe, but somewhere I never imagined I would be. I mean, this is the whole kind of sort of point of my book, really, is what ties it all together is I've done all these things in my personal life as well as my traveling life that I think are completely ridiculous and impossible. I never imagined I would be able to travel across the Sahara. It's such a privilege and such an astonishing place to visit, let alone for me going and for what the place actually is. So it's also dangerous, frankly, where we were, the northwest of the Sahara. You've got the world's largest minefield, biggest, well, I'm sure Michael could do it better than I, but trying to compress the geopolitics. You've got Western Sahara, which is basically an unrecognized country on the Atlantic coast that Morocco claims and has occupied. And many of the Western Saharan people, who are called Sahrawis, have been fighting an independence campaign for decades now. It's a forgotten war, really, and conflict that simmers on the edge of just across the water from Europe. And we traveled down through Western Sahara into Mauritania, crossing this minefield, which we got lost in, which was one of the standout, ludicrous moments of my life, in a car with a driver who doesn't know which way to go, blown up vehicles all around, and a little argument and debate about do you go left or right in a minefield. There's a sort of metaphor for life, isn't there? And we crossed that out alive, luckily, made it into Mauritania, and traveled through Mauritania into the Sahara Desert, and had, for me, what is still for me one of the most beautiful travel-y, oh, it makes me smile thinking about it, travel-y encounters with the lords of the desert, the blue men of the Sahara. These are the Tuareg nomads who roam and have roamed through the Sahara for centuries, perhaps thousands of years. And we were there in the Sahara Desert, had a little camp. We were baking some bread in the sand. It was all ridiculously wonderful anyway, sitting around the fire, chewing the fat and telling stories. And this bloke appeared out of the darkness with these billowing blue robes wrapped around him and just came and sat down around the fire next to us, this Tuareg nomad. And the look he gave, I don't know if you've ever done it, but you know when you're traveling home on the tube and you get into a carriage late at night and there's one other person, you just sort of maybe go, like that. That's what he did, like that. And that was just, on planet Earth, it was such a perfectly human interaction with a remote person in an unknown part of the world, and I was just completely awestruck by it. And the law, almost, of the desert is that you share almost everything you have with a traveller in that situation. So he ate our bread, he had some water, and we had this moment, sorry to go on, I'm getting back into it now. One of our guides said to him, "Oh, where have you come from?" And he said, "Over there." And they said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "Over there." And that was it. And we just went, "Oh, okay, yeah."
I think we should all start answering like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to. There's a bit I want to share from the book, which I think just gives you a lot of insight into why I think you're so good at communicating with people.
Oh, come on. Okay.
You told me to read this, no, you didn't really?
I did. There's a few more things you've got to say, aren't there?
Having grown up expecting nothing of myself, I still feel I don't deserve this life. I never expected to become an author, to find my Anya, let alone marry her, and to live in a beautiful corner of Devon. I was never supposed to become a TV presenter, circle the globe 3 times, or journey around the Indian Ocean, the Caribbean, or the Mediterranean, travel the length of Russia or North America. I've always felt like a bit of a nobody, a lucky nobody. So, you're not a nobody, but I think you've turned what could have actually made your life difficult into a real superpower, because I think that's what distinguishes you as a travel presenter and as a writer and as a journalist, because you are genuinely, you never go into situations feeling better than anyone or that you've got something to teach them or there's any Western arrogance. You're just connecting with those people because you don't feel better than them. Is that fair?
I would, okay, yeah. I mean, it's a lovely thing that you've that you've said, and thank you for that. It feels weird to have it read out and quoted back at me. But I'm sticking with it, and I stand by those words. I do, even on stage here, my goodness. I think you're absolutely right. It is true, and I want to keep it, that I don't feel I'm better than the people I meet. Yeah, and I think that's how it should be. I think there will be situations when I'm with somebody who conventional wisdom or stereotype would suggest they're either idiotic, stupid, astonishing, whatever word. I mean, I just see them as more nuanced than that. And I think the experiences I've had in life make me realize and know that evil people, bad people do good things, good people do bad things. There is a whole range of behaviors on the spectrum in each of us individually and collectively. And I suppose I would like to say I see people for what they are to a certain extent and what they want to show me, but I definitely start from a position of respect for them and their culture. And I don't bring a sense of Western superiority, I would hope, but I do bring my own moral compass or code to a situation. You know, I don't think that we should just think everything's cool in a country where women or children are horrifically oppressed. You know, I think there are some things where we can say, actually, guys, this is not good. And how we do that, yes, we definitely have to be careful about it, because we have to remember that we might have been on the same timeline of development just a short while ago. But I think it is okay for us to have collective views on what's acceptable for us as a species, but I try not to impose too much. I try to understand, and I try and raise, at the very least, a quizzical eyebrow in situations where I'm concerned. But, you know, it is difficult in the programs, because we're trying to represent not just the situation of people we're filming with, but people watching as well. I've got to try and interpret what the viewers who pay for the programs in the first place, what they feel and believe, and sort of navigate through that, which, you know, is a responsibility, frankly. Well, is that a fair answer? I think it is. Trying.
Yes. You get a gold star.
Thank you.
It's interesting that you bring that up, that sort of tension, I suppose, between sometimes our idea of what's right and sort of realities and the necessities of life. And there are two things which actually come up in this book. And one is obviously conservationism, which you talk about a lot. And again, that was really eye-opening for me, just how you discuss how obviously it's a noble ideal and obviously it's what we're all working towards, but just that tension between you being up close and personal with people who are using that land to earn a living. Where do you stand on that, the sort of economic necessities of that, and then obviously what we all want, which is a cleaner, safer, more beautiful planet?
I'm not sure we are all working towards it, I think is the problem. I think people aren't angry enough. I think people aren't concerned enough. I think they don't really understand how bad the situation is out there. I've got to remember the rest of what you asked, but I'm slightly jumping on that in a sense, because I don't think we are collectively working towards the better protection of what we all value most. I think we're hopelessly behind on the situation. I think it's as serious as it possibly can be in terms of a threat to life on this planet and our continuing existence as a functioning civilization, no less. I really believe that. So how the hell do we navigate that in a TV program? It's very hard. I start from the point of view that I think fundamentally I really like human beings. I really like us. I really like people out there. I'm not somebody who wants to scrub us from the scene to let nature run riot. I think of us maybe a bit more than most people. The average respondent might not see as I do that we are part of nature in such a fundamental way. You know, for people who live in a city, it's hard. I'm not suggesting all you lot, but you know, walking here just from the tube, I was just so struck by how easy it is to forget that you're connected to Mother Earth and nature. I mean, I know it's kind of obvious to say it in concrete Barbican, But just up the road, I walked past this micro garden that's supposed to be greening the environment. And in a way, things like that are beautiful, and then maybe they're a reminder, but I also worry that people might think that's kind of enough. How do we navigate it? I do it with difficulty. It's the biggest challenge, is trying to show in the programs the scale of what 8 billion people are doing and have done to planet Earth. And I don't feel we have to convince people anymore who don't believe in climate change. I think we're past that point. I don't feel the need
He's not
to
in power anymore, it's fine.
Pardon? No. I don't feel I need to explain or really provide proof of that in a program. I think we're moving on to here is what's happening, and here is how it's affecting people. So how do we navigate it, though, with 8 billion people? I don't want them wiped from the scene, but certainly I think we need much more sophisticated leadership, frankly, top-down, guiding us, leading us, inspiring us to a greener, more sustainable future. Otherwise, we're screwed. I mean, we really are. And you don't have to believe a telebod, but okay, believe a telebod. I've been out there. I've spoken to the people. I've been in all these different countries around the world. I've stayed with indigenous people in remote parts of planet Earth who say to me, unprompted, our climate is changing. What the hell is going on? They're feeling it tangibly, practically, physically, and that should frighten all of us. We're in a war now. We are in a war for the preservation of complex life on planet Earth. And our understanding of that situation is 5 miles behind where it needs to be. We need a much more aggressive, rapid approach to the problem and the situation. We've wasted so much time. It gets me really bloody angry how much time we've wasted. I remember as a kid hearing about this, and still now. And we could be and should have been doing so much. It's not acceptable, and we need much clearer, better leadership nationally and globally on it. Get angry. I think anger is okay. Anger is a really important way of creating change, particularly in a democracy, because it's a way of getting a voice heard. We need a lot more anger about this situation, because our futures are being screwed by what we're being allowed to do, and that worries me a lot, because it's such a shame. It would be so awful if the most interesting creature that's ever existed pushed itself off. Sir Martin Rees, I'm sorry, it's probably a story maybe people here know, but just as an indication, Sir Martin Rees, Astronomer Royal, occupies the Newton chair, one of the greatest scientists. He wrote a book called Our Final Century. Sir Martin Rees is warning about it. In the States, they had to rename the book because Our Final Century sounded a bit too long, so they had to call it Our Final Hour in the United States. Because unless it was on that sort of time frame, people wouldn't react and respond. That's a problem with the fundamental structure of our democracy and our electoral cycles. Sorry.
I would vote for you if you decided to.
That'd be a bad idea. I can ask the tricky, I can be a pain and annoying. See? No, come on.
Yes. We need to have a look at your new show, which is coming up. When is this coming up? This is the Americas. I'm saying we need to have a look like this is some terrible chore. We're all very excited to have a look at this, but I just didn't want to interrupt your very impressive flow.
Quite late last minute, I suddenly thought, what about if we showed some clips and some photos to the lovely folk who are coming to the Barbican? And then I sort of sent them in. Emily just had to have a look at them when she arrived here. It hasn't really been organised and planned, so give us a little bit of a break.
Do you want to see
entirely
them?
my fault. Surely not. Basically, I should just quickly explain. I was travelling down through South America last February into March, where we started filming a new series where I was going to travel the length of South America. Lucky old me. And we got from Venezuela through the Guyana and Suriname into the depths of the Amazon, and did a couple of little hopeless home videos that hopefully you might be able to see now.
I'm in a remote corner of Venezuela, and I'm just beginning my journey down through South America. The second part of my journey down through the whole of the Americas. I'm in an area you could very justifiably call a lost world. I'm standing on an enormous chunk of rock that is one of the oldest land masses on planet Earth. It's completely breathtaking. It's a sea of clouds beneath me. So these land masses are called tepuis, and they're almost impossibly ancient. To give you some sort of context, Mount Everest is around 60 million years old. These tepuis, which you can see some more of in the background there, are thought to be more than 2 billion years old. They were formed long before the continents drifted apart. Completely mesmerizing. All the great explorers have been here. Steve Backshall, Ben Fogle, Brian Blessed. I'm late to the party, but my goodness, this is somewhere I will remember for the rest of my life.
Oh, wow, that looks incredible.
It's really weird to see it, because we came back from filming, and basically the next day, state of emergency was declared in Spain, and that was it. I am hoping now we'll be able to go back and continue filming that series, but it won't be on for ages. It's going to take me a long time to get to the bottom of South America. So I don't know how we're going to do the, because I look a bit younger there as well. We're going to have to have a fade to black, and then time pass, and then hello again, and then we continue the journey, hopefully.
We've got a couple of pictures as well.
I think there's one more clip as well.
Is there another
we quickly
clip?
agreed
Okay.
on. Should we play the other clip? Oh, yeah.
I'm in a remote area of northeastern Brazil,
You can hear the jungle.
in part of what's called the Guiana Shield, which is one of the most spectacular bits of forest in the world, extending across the northeast of South America. And we're filming with people from the YMP community.
Terrible camera work.
And the lady in front of me is Nazaré, who is the first female leader of the YMP.
Wow.
It's incredible.
I really hope that we'll be able to finish, and I really want people to see that series, because the indigenous community, maybe we could see the pictures first. Maybe I should explain when we see some pictures. So they were with the French Foreign Legion in South America, as you are.
Of course you are.
Yeah, out on patrol with them. I love this guy. So we're in the European Space Agency Centre in French Guiana. This bloke started at the Space Agency Centre, where Europe's rockets are launched from. They're not the actual ones in the background, little models there. He started as an intern in charge of air conditioning. He's now the director of operations and the launch controller. It's such a brilliant story. I loved it. I loved being with him. And he was very much, yes, what is strange about this? I'm like, you started in charge of air conditioning, for goodness. He does the whole countdown. He runs the mission. He's in charge of it. It's brilliant. Anyway, so we went to there as well. And yeah, there's a shot of a rocket that I should have put the other way round. Sorry. So you know some context. I think there's a couple more photos you can flick through. So that's the YMP. They were astonishing. This is if we just flick through the photos, and maybe I'll just talk about them a little bit quickly, because we've got a little screen down here, obviously. So they're a remote community. I think 1973 was when they had real contact with the outside world. They're in the Brazilian Amazon. And it was so ironic in many ways and horrific to be with them just as the pandemic now was turning into a wildfire, because the lady on the left there, she's the cacique, she's the chief of the community, that's her son. She could remember what happened when contact was first made, and measles came to their community. They had no protection against this new virus, this new pandemic, if you like, and it destroyed them. She was telling me stories about how people would wake up healthy. they would contract measles during the day, and they died before the sun went down. 95%, they think, of their people died within a year of contact. And it was such an instant, oh my God, it was like we were being thrown back into the plague, the worst sort of situation of a pandemic. It was frightening stuff, and we were the last people they allowed to have visiting. I put this shot in because you can see that's his mobile phone there. So they're properly remote, but they can get a signal at the edge of their territory, and it's beautiful because as a community, they've basically decided what of the outside world they'll accept and what they will keep out. It's a very hard situation to navigate. Their control of screen time is pretty severe for their kids, definitely. It's very much like this, not allowing too much contact with the outside world. Anyway, so they were nearly wiped out by the pandemic. We went into the rainforest with them, and what we filmed with them that hopefully will make it onto the TV at some point. I'm sure I'm not supposed to be showing you these pictures, so don't tell anyone. But what they were really keen to point out, we went in with a botanist and a pharmacist as well, that the rainforest is worth so much more money as a future natural pharmaceutical treasure chest for us as a species. It is a madness, it is an obscenity that we chop it down. So many of the drugs that we rely on, people here will rely on, and collectively we rely on, have come from Mother Nature. We are annihilating ecosystems and pushing into extinction forms of trees and plants that who knows, may be a cure for the bloody COVID, maybe for cancer, maybe for anything. It's a madness that we're doing it. Anyway, so we talked about that with them, and then we left, and we were the last people they had in. They then literally put up physical barriers at the edge of their land, and they cut themselves off from the outside world and retreated into the jungle.
Well, and that's going to be next year, we hope.
I hope so. I mean, we're hoping that it's now going to be possible for us to head back out there and film. But you know, we've got to be careful. Before we went to see them, we went through medical checkups and tests to make sure we weren't taking anything in. Not COVID, because when we left, it wasn't a problem here, and we went to South America where nobody had it. So, but we had to be checked and monitored, because I don't want to turn up in a remote Bolivian village and infect people. So we've got to, work out that it's going to be acceptable and okay, and also that there's a value to us doing this. You know, I feel that there is. I feel there's a lot of stories still to be told out there in the big world, and I want to make it possible, and I want to get their story, the YMP and others, onto telly as whenever it's possible. But yeah, I think it's going to take us months to we've barely started the journey there. Don't tell anyone I showed you those pictures,
No,
okay?
don't.
I'll get into loads of trouble.
And we've got a lot of stories left to tell tonight as well.
Okay.
We've got to go to the interval bit now.
Have we? Oh, sorry, right. Okay.
That's not very professional, is it? Sorry. Please go and have a drink. But before you do, can you get this? Will allow you to ask Simon a question.
Oh, I like that. Oh, all right, okay, all right.
Ask Simon a question. So
we're not allowed to do, like a roving microphone because of the old COVID rules.
We can't do
And I'm
the
really
mic.
sorry we can't do a signing afterwards as well, because I love doing that, but it's against the law or something, basically.
But
all right.
Please do. We'd love to get your questions, and we'll be answering those in the second half. So
Yeah.
go and have a drink, and we'll see you
Check the
in
QR
about 20
code.
minutes.
I know you know how to do it. All right, we'll see you in a bit.
See you in a bit.
I'll leave that.
See you in a bit.
All right?
You want to go
Are
there?
we going to swap?
We'll swap.
Swap sides. Very up.
Why not? Hello.
We should swap waters. All
Where-
okay?
Yeah?
Whoop, whoop.
I've got some really exciting questions here. Thank you so much for sending them through. But before we get to that, you're going to give us a little sneak preview, aren't you? This is a series that's coming up fairly soonish.
Yes. As I was just thinking, it doesn't really live up to that sort of claim. But so this year, we filmed a little series in the Lake District and Cumbria. Wouldn't have expected that. On the train
huge.
north probably later. So yeah, we filmed in the Lake District and Cumbria, and it's for a series called The Lakes. That is going to be on, I think, what is it now? In a month or so, fingers crossed, although we never really know. And it's 3 programs, and it was really, it felt like being somewhere properly exotic abroad, because extreme, wonderful, bizarre things happen, and we met some really incredible characters who, again, I will remember, I really will, and that's the whole point of the journeys. So I think I did a couple of really poor selfie shot videos, I'm very sorry, but I think I found one that may or may not be acceptable that you might see now. Oh,
Just up in the Lake District, doing some filming. And I just wanted to share this moment with you, as it is absolutely gorgeous here. Let's just turn around. Oh. I mean, it could certainly do with a few more trees, always, but spectacular. The Lake District is rammed this summer, but you get away from the crowds quite quickly. Oh, I'm heading up to the top of Scawfell Pike, highest mountain in England. I've got some colleagues with me somewhere, but I better go and find them. Anyway, it's just gorgeous, and I wanted to share it with you.
So lovely.
I think...
Is it a different experience? I was just going to ask you something, making sort of documentaries here, because I suppose there's awareness of you, and does that change how you work? Is that something you're conscious of?
I mean, obviously, I've got to have lots of minders and a Winnebago and everything. I think it didn't change yet. I mean, I think I'm trying to think if anyone said, "Oh no, we don't want him coming." I don't think that happened. I'm honestly remembering, actually, that I shot that in total honesty. I slipped away to have a wee break, and then I realised I'd got left a little bit behind because everyone else had moved on. And we were going up Scawfell Pike, or Scawfell as some people locally call it, and tallest mountain. We were with somebody from the mountain rescue team, not just in case, but she was telling us all about the challenges they faced there with rescuing people who've strayed off the path, and the weather's changed and it's all gone horribly wrong. And I constantly felt that, it could have been me as a younger person, because I had this experience in Scotland where I went climbing in Glencoe, and it was a really turning point in my life where it helped to develop a lot of physical self-confidence for me when I was at this very low point you talked about earlier, when I was on the edge of the bridge. One of the ways out was going on this little adventure in Glencoe and not having any map or any supplies or anything with me, and nearly coming to a horrible ending, or having to be rescued by mountain rescue, and somehow getting through it. And I really wouldn't want us to not be taking those chances and pushing ourselves in the natural world. And we're very careful in the program, actually, not to criticize too many people going to the Lake District, because it's really important that we do. It's a really beautiful part of the world, and we all need to enjoy the outdoors. We just need to do it, or have it done in a sustainable way. So I'm quite looking forward to the series, and interested to see how people will react in Cumbria to a southern telly presenter coming up. A little bit nervous about it, but hopefully it'll be okay.
Well, we're going to look at pictures from that now, or should we do that later?
Yeah, let's see. We can see some pics. Absolutely.
Let's see the pictures.
We've got some. So this is not quite what you expect in a series, perhaps, about the Lake District. And we like, and it's really important for me that we show what I slightly pretentiously call the light and the shade of a place. And this is definitely on the shadier side. This is on the coast of Cumbria. It's Sellafield, which I'm sure some of you know and maybe have been to, but it is not everyone knows it is, in fact, the most contaminated and toxic industrial site in Europe, probably west of Chernobyl. We're standing next to pools there that are really horrifically contaminated with radioactive, fuel rods are still in there, and they're cleaning up in this enormous national endeavour to spend perhaps £100 billion over the next 100 years to clean up what is actually the most complicated nuclear site on planet Earth. And it felt like such an extreme place to be. You can just drive 15 minutes from the beautiful lakes of the Lake District down to Sellafield, and we were allowed in there, and with Dorothy there, who is in charge of a 1,000-person team cleaning up these ponds. Elsewhere at Sellafield, well, goodness, it takes, let me get my facts right, but it takes about 5 kilos of plutonium to make a nuclear bomb. At Sellafield, they have 240 tons of plutonium. So it is a site that we vigorously protect, that I think we as Brits definitely need to know a little bit more about, and which Dorothy and an amazing team there are engaged in the cleanup on. So it's part of our series. It's a series which has got me climbing Scarfell Pike with the mountain rescue team, meeting sheep farmers, and it's got the most contaminated industrial site in Europe. It's a strange mix, but hopefully you'll watch it. That's a bit more of the PR shot, really, isn't it? That's the last bit of filming we did.
Well, that's a nice pic of you.
It is a nice pic, actually. I'm quite chuffed with that, and I'm a little bit rosy there. We haven't had to grade it too much. But honestly, we went through a total fast to get to that point because we didn't have time to recce where we were going. And we looked on a map and thought, oh, we could get off there and just walk up that hill and that'll give us a good view. And it was completely overgrown with brambles. So honestly, for an hour and a bit, as the sun was going down, we were fighting our way through these brambles. And it was just a farce. Everything went wrong, and then it all went completely right. Because we got to this point, I had about 5 minutes to deliver some pompous closing thoughts for the camera, take a few quick photos, and then, right, that's it, the sun's gone down, let's go.
That could be, if you ever wanted to audition for Lord of the Rings, that would be the image that I think you should
It would work for me, would it? All right. So I'm with some youngsters there on the banks of Windermere. I really hope you'll see them because they were really special. And they're 16, 17, I think maybe an 18. The lady just on my left there, on my left in the picture, she's an inspiring instructor who, like the kids, comes from a tricky part of Cumbria, the town of Barrow, right out, dangling out there on a peninsula, where a lot of people feel disconnected from the rest of the country. There's not a huge number of opportunities for them. They're a long way from London, and they're slightly out there, frankly. And a lot of the kids she works with have never been up into the Lake District, even though they can literally see the hills of the Lake District on the horizon. They've never been in there. And she takes them up on some fairly harmlessly calm, lovely little adventure trips, going out on a kayak and so on, but gifting them experiences in the outdoors, which can have a really profound effect on them. And I was really impressed by these kids. They had so much potential in them. And yeah, maybe I saw a bit of a lost me in some of them, but they were already doing so much better than I was, because they actually turned up. You know, they'd got out of bed and they'd come along and they'd taken part in this, and they were prepared to experience it. So I really respected them, and I hope you'll see them and love them for it.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Angus! This is an incredible story, this lad. Don't mention anything about this before it goes out, if you don't mind, because again, I'm probably not supposed to be showing you these pictures, frankly. I didn't ask anyone. I just thought you'd like to see them. But this lad, he's 18 years old, and his parents both died very close to each other. And he is now left running a 1,500-acre farm on his own, really, with 1,600, I think, sheep to look after and care for. He's a taciturn, incredible bloke, dealing astonishingly with a situation that would have knocked me completely over. And anyone who's ever tempted to think that the young in this country aren't capable of greatness and responsibility, honestly, I've found that preconception overturned so many times in the last couple of years filming in this country. We were with him when he had two of his mates working with him, two 17-year-olds, one of whom was still doing her A-levels, and the three of them were basically looking after dozens of sheep during lambing as life lived and died around them. They were absolutely incredible and inspiring. I stayed overnight in the caravan in the back there to be close to the lambing, but he's an astonishing young man. He has no idea how impressive he is. I hope you'll love him.
Oh, thank you, Simon. And we will all keep quiet about it. You can trust us.
Thank you.
We're Simon Reeve fans, and Simon Reeve fans are good people. I want to talk about another journey to an impossible place, what seemed like an impossible place, which was fatherhood and marriage in some way, because your lovely wife, Anya, sound like a 70s TV presenter, but she is lovely and she is your wife. I get the sense, and you acknowledge this in your book, that this was something you were shilly-shallying a bit.
Shilly-shallying. That's a phrase you don't hear a lot of, isn't it? Possibly a reason for that. Go on.
But I felt you had to be gently reminded by friends just what you were in danger of missing out on.
With
perhaps.
her?
Yeah.
I've had to be reminded by loads of friends loads of times about what I should be doing. I mean, for all my failings, I do take advice, and I wish more of it was offered, quite frankly, because I've often benefited. Yeah, I mean, that isn't, I mean, I got married, I'd fallen in love, I was in a relationship, it's a very normal thing to do, but I didn't think it would be possible. I didn't think it was going to happen to me. I didn't believe that I could hold down a relationship, I would find somebody. Yeah, I think it is helpful for us to recognize how special life is when it goes our way. And I think, I mean, maybe I should have put that a bit more, but I think that underpins or underlies what I was trying to say about the impossibility of the relationship. I never thought I would find somebody like her. I had some really tricky relationships. I was a bit hopeless in love, and I thought I was never going to find the right person, or anyone who would put up with me and I would be able to love as well, frankly. And I do count my blessings, I do. And I think remembering the ludicrousness, the impossibility, if you like, of these journeys helps me to recognize how special it all is. Now, I don't ever want to be in this, maybe it's a weird analogy, but I don't ever want to not think it's wonderful when I turn the tap on and fresh water comes out. I want to go, oh, that's great, isn't it? I want to feel that, because I know the reality for billions of people on this planet is that they don't necessarily always have that luxury. And for our ancestors, for the hundreds and thousands of generations who've gone before us, we are the luckiest people who have ever existed, the luckiest human beings ever. And that is why it's such a tragedy if we screw it up and we don't make our existence into the distance viable and possible. So, yeah, I'm taking giant leaps then from shilly-shallying around and being lucky in a relationship. But it's all connected for me. I was surprised. I'm very grateful.
I also thought it was actually really important that I'm sure that's not why you wrote it, but I think the end result is that I think it will be really helpful to people, because you're really honest about just your fertility journey as well, because you had issues in that area, didn't you? And I think, but it's good that you've talked about it so openly.
I did have issues.
It's up to you to say it.
In that area.
You can say it, I can't.
I'm all right with saying it.
Okay.
I mean, these poor folk, they don't know what they've let themselves in for, so I've got to be a bit careful that nobody passes out in horror or anything.
Yeah, but it's your choice how you want to talk about it.
I've put it down there in a book, and some of them have got it. I'm
okay, you had a low sperm count.
I was infertile. Yeah. I mean, I had an okay sperm count. I just my sperm were deformed. They were in a really bad way. So to explain, sorry. So the book is, I mean, the clue's in the subtitle, I suppose. It's about all of my journeys, and maybe I've poured a little bit too much into it, I don't know, but I just wanted to be really honest about the challenges I've faced and get angry as well about things I'm cross about, how we're poisoning ourselves, for example. And one of my biggest journeys that I've been on, and perhaps the most impossible, was to creating my own little life, having a child. And it was tricky, it was awful, it was upsetting, and at one point I was told, as I explain in the book, that it was going to be impossible for me. I mean, I was sitting down, I can remember it all, I was sitting there and I was told, you will not be able to have a child. And it came as such an epic shock to me. For such a pessimistic, negative person like me, I just thought, oh, of course I will. Everybody does. And I'd always wanted to as well. And it's the biggest mistake of my life, I think, that I put it off. And I shilly-shally, definitely on that more than anything. And then when I wanted to, when we actually got on with it as in the natural way, it was impossible. We couldn't create a little life. And so a chunk of the book is about that journey and the challenge and discovering that I was infertile and then being told you can't change this and then changing it. And eventually having the most special thing in my life, my little lad, which is the blessing of my existence, frankly. And I thank my stars for him more than anything. But it's that journey, and yes, it was awful, and it went on under the surface, and I didn't talk about it. I didn't even talk to my mates about it. I was such an idiot.
Why was that?
I think I'm a bloke, and I think I didn't realize at the time the value of talking about it. And I don't think I particularly had an ego about it. I just think I didn't recognize there was an importance, and it was useful, really. And that was wrong. I should have done. I would have learned from other people I know now. And it was only really after I did the first volume of my memoirs. It's so ludicrous, but so my book, step by step, it really takes my life up to 2006, and definitely my personal life wouldn't warrant a whole book like that, but it's the journeys that do, it's the journeys that have been incredible. But in my first book, I was very open about the challenges I'd had when I was a teenager, particularly how far I bounced down into darkness, if you like. And I didn't just find that cathartic, I felt very humbled and moved by how people reacted to it, as I was saying before. And so when it came to talking about doing this book, to be honest, I had no hesitations about putting in the details of my sperm count into the book. I'm okay with it. Maybe it will help somebody. Maybe it will help someone to talk about it. That's an important thing for me to share. The only worry I had was how my son would react and whether it would be just too cringingly awful for him. But he's 10, I think I've got in there just before he becomes horrified by me. And I did ask him, and I did talk it through with him. And then I even read finally out what we were going to put in. And he's like, oh, it's really interesting, carry on. So I think I've done all right.
You've just made that window.
Yes.
You're like Indiana Jones pulling his hat out before the boulder comes down.
I am nervous about that, though, but, how he'll react and whether, he'll get a whole load of grief as he gets older. But I really hope he won't. I hope we've moved on from that and we can be open and honest about it. Because, as I say, I'm angry because I feel that we're chemically poisoning ourselves. And I think a lot of my problem was living an unhealthy lifestyle and smoking the wrong things and drinking too much and so on and consuming too much plastic in different forms. And all the plastic we put into our lives and souls, and I talk about that in the book as well, and hopefully other people will get angry as well. Please. Oh, good. Endocrine disrupting chemicals. Look them up.
How can I follow that? You also I'm really interested in how your travels and experiences in different cultures, I think, really inform your view of parenting as well.
Right.
Particularly this idea, there's an incident with a kid playing with a snake. Are you all right?
I'm just falling apart, honestly. I've got a bad knee and I fell off a climbing wall. Anyway,
no.
yeah.
There's an incident with a
kid.
With a kid and a snake.
Yeah.
Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yes, I was there.
Yes.
But she is right. You're kindly helping me with
Being
my
a bit
terrible
cheeky
memory.
this whole.
Yeah.
No, but there's an incident with the snake, and I found it very powerful. Can I read an extract?
Yes.
Would you like that? This is a more general thing that you say. We don't get anywhere without confronting fear. The richest rewards in life come from a bit of risk-taking, from pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones. When we take chances, we get the best memories and experiences. We confront fear by testing ourselves, by exercising our confidence like a muscle, and by building it up. Start with experiences that resemble small weights. 1 kilogram, then 2 kilograms, then 5, 10, 20, 30. And your tolerance of new situations and even danger increases. Start with simple encounters. If you're an arachnophobe trying to overcome a horror of spiders, for example, they wouldn't start by stroking a tarantula. They'd build up to it. First, they'd look at a cartoon picture of a spider, then a real photo of a spider, then a kid's toy spider, then a realistic spider, then a small real spider, and so on, until yes, maybe one day they could be stroking a tarantula. No thanks. However, throughout the book, this theme runs through a lot, this idea that we lead quite cloistered lives, and we increasingly allow our children to lead quite cloistered lives. Would that be fair to describe your view of how we raise kids, particularly in the West?
Yes, definitely. I think kids, probably teenagers even more. So the incident with the snake that you're talking about is where I was with a remote indigenous community in Paraguay, I think, and we were sitting around, chatting around the fire as you do, and this lad picked up a snake and was swinging it round, and I was sort of leaping in to sort of grab the snake off him, and people went, no, let him. He needs to walk this path on his own. He needs to make mistakes where we can see him, so we'll be able to respond. And his sort of parents were there nervously, but not interfering too much. I mean, I think there's a balance, you know. But I channel a little bit of that. And there was a specific time I remember when my lad, he was 2 or 3 or something, he could barely totter, and he was too far away from me on these rocks down on the beach and the coast in Devon, and he was walking over quite a steep rock, barefoot, with sort of gashing rocks nearby, and I properly had a moment of, oh my God, what do I do? Remember the snake? But it's my only child. Remember the snake? He's my only child. And I really felt the cringe of being uncertain. But generally, yes, I think we cannot wrap ourselves, our teens, our kids up in quite so much cotton wool. We have to give them responsibility. We have to give them experiences. That is how they become not just more rounded human beings, but they become more mentally able to cope with the world and themselves. I think we don't give children enough experiences in the outdoors. We don't let them handle things that are risky and dangerous. We don't give them profound responsibilities anywhere near enough. And we don't respect them for what they are, which is small adult human beings who are capable of greatness and astonishing feats. So yeah, I'm worried that we're creating a risk-averse culture that denies them the tools and experiences they need to become functioning adult human beings with stable minds and happy heads.
And I found it very interesting that you experienced that, particularly when you visited India. You saw there's a very different attitude towards that. And I mean, my own personal theory is that we have huge issues with mortality. So it is to do with not wanting to confront that, I suppose. Seeing as you were mentioning your son, We've had some of your questions through. Thank you so much. They're brilliant, by the way. Can we start with a question about your son? It should be up on the screen. This is from Lucy and Tim. You can see that. You don't need me to read it, but I will anyway.
My eyesight's terrible, but yeah, Lucy and Tim say, what's the first country from your travels that you would want to take your son? It's a question from the floor at the Barbican. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Lucy and Tim. I think it's Bangladesh is where, I'm not sure if it's the first country, but it's certainly somewhere I really want to take my lad. And the reason is that Bangladesh is an astonishing place. It really is. It is a beautiful, wonderful country with some of the most inspiring human beings I've encountered anywhere. And I really want him to see how people live on this planet. I want him to see other worlds and other lives. And I want to gift him, really, selfishly, the chance to see how other people live so he can realize how fortunate he is when that fresh water comes out of the tap. Because honestly, I think I've been in some very dark places around this planet, really tricky places. I've been to some beautiful ones as well. But when I've been in places where people are suffering, one of the ways I do cope with it is by using it as a recognition of the good fortune that I have, that we have in this country. And I think we need that reminder, we really do, when we're worrying about what somebody else has got and how somebody else is looking on bloody Instagram or something. We need to recognize that Instagram is not the normal, it's not normal for human beings. We need to know what is normal for human beings. You see it at all ends on the spectrum in Bangladesh, the good, the bad, the struggle, the joy, the flourishing, the difficulty of life. So I'd love to take him there.
Okay. Where would you go in the world that you consider to be the most unexplored and remote place? That is from Issy.
Issy, where would you go the most remote? I think everywhere's been explored, I hate to say, but that's not to say that there aren't discoveries to be made. That's not to say there aren't experiences to be had, because if you only go if you just want to go somewhere remote, that's a challenge. But if you want to go to have real experiences out there on planet Earth, then our brothers and sisters on this planet, they always keep delivering. So don't travel for the place, travel for the people, and you are never disappointed, because we've always got stories to share. But Greenland is somewhere that I have touched just the surface on. I've traveled a little bit around the edge. It is a awe-inspiring place to go, just to have a little glimpse of. And I do have this sort of fantasy of trekking across the Greenland ice sheet. I do. I think it would be astonishing and profound for me as an experience. It would cost a fortune, take forever. I'm not sure what I'd get out of it other than me going, wow, a lot. But I would love to go.
I'll be up for watching that.
I can feel my phone buzzing. I thought I'd turn it off. It's very unprofessional.
It's all right. It's only the Barbican.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. We've had this just in from Ludo, the dog from Leytonstone.
Ludo, the dog from Leytonstone. That's brilliant. Your dogs are obviously two of your best. Oh, you've got a big screen here. You can read it, can't you? Where would I go? They're totally lacking in any camera acceptability. They're totally uncontrollable. I couldn't possibly go with them. So that's Obi and Lila.
Yeah.
Lila is our new addition to our little family. Got her during lockdown, like every other family around where we live. It was bloody tulip craze, honestly. They were going for thousands. But we managed to get her relatively acceptably. Obi on the left has been with us for 6 years. He basically talks now. We was discussing dogs backstage. I think they've evolved. Honestly, I think we're living through a period where dogs have acquired the ability to become sentient human beings, and mine will just go. So maybe they could talk, actually. Maybe they'd make more sense to me. Where would I go, though? I think I'd only take Obi on the left, because Lila is just squirrel and off. But Obi is a bit calmer. And I think I'd walk the Camino with him. Yeah, I would. That's what really instantly jumps into my head. So the ancient pilgrimage route across northern Spain to Santiago de Compostela, which I filmed a little bit of for a series called Pilgrimage years ago, and I was really taken by the joy of that experience. It's historically a Christian pilgrimage, but now it's the most popular long-distance walking route in the world by some accounts. And tens of thousands of people before COVID were doing it every year. They walked through some incredible countryside. I love the sheer act of putting one foot in front of another. I think it's a much underrated mental health tool and tonic. And I would love to do that with Obi.
We've also had a lot of "please can I come with you" to South America. And a lot of "where shall I go on my honeymoon?"
Oh, goodness. Madagascar.
Okay.
Madagascar. Go somewhere extreme. Go somewhere special. Travel sustainably, for goodness sake. Travel responsibly. Go with a company that really cares about you and the communities that it operates in. But go somewhere that will really tweak your buttons, because surely the pandemic, if nothing else, has made us realize that these privileges, this responsibility that travel is, can be taken away from us quickly. And my God, we should all know life is short. So use it while you can. Push yourself out of your comfort zone. Can I answer a question of myself? Because I talk about the travel, and sometimes people can say, well, aren't you a bit of a... They can almost be reluctant to say, well, aren't you a bit of a bloody hypocrite for talking about the damage to the planet, but encouraging us to have these travel experiences? And yes, I am a bit of a hypocrite, I'm sure in many a way, but I really believe in the power of travel to do good, to protect and to preserve. And, I bang on about it a fair bit, and it's because I do believe it. I know that there are special, spectacular places around the planet that we all want to protect, that tourism preserves, that during the pandemic have really struggled because they haven't had people coming in, they haven't had tourists arriving, paying for food and lodging, and thus giving local people an economic incentive to look after these special places. And I know that we're going to lose them if tourists don't go to them. So just mull that over when you're thinking about what you're going to do, where you're going to go on your honeymoon or anything else. Get up, get out there, go to these special places, and use your money to help these places to be sustainable into the long term.
I was going to say that was something that I got the sense really struck you in the Maldives, was how crucial tourism. But there's a brilliant bit in the book. This is what I'm going to call peak Simon, which is he gets a bit angry with some tourists that are there, and they're just swimming, minding their own business. And he says, there are these wonderful manta rays, and I swam over to them, and I said, look, the manta rays are over there. He said, they couldn't have been less interested. I was furious. I found it very sort of touching and quite sweet, but it really bothered you, didn't it, that those people did not want to see the manta rays?
Yeah, I get angry about other stuff, but yeah, I've got quite a short fuse, I suppose. And I didn't scream at them. I was just annoyed with them. And they're a sort of benchmark for me of what you can miss out on if you don't put yourself out there a bit when you're traveling, when you're on a honeymoon or having a holiday or an expedition or an adventure. The Maldives is a bizarre place in so many ways, and our impression of it, I think, would very much be honeymooners, okay, and A-listers and Instagrammers, but it is also an extraordinary magnet for marine life in the Indian Ocean. Much of it is a marine protected area where they keep the big industrial fishing boats out. So the reef there, which is still often stunning, is a nursery for life that grows in those waters and then goes out into the rest of the Indian Ocean. So I hadn't really understood that about the Maldives. I saw the one dimension of it, the Instagram image, and I didn't understand that actually the greatness of it is under the waves. And under the waves is like going to another planet. It is staggering. So yeah, I went down there, right place, right time, lucky old me, but near where tourists were, and saw maybe 10, 12 astonishing dining table sized manta rays flying through the water towards me in perfect formation. And that was a moment that I will absolutely treasure. It was my personal moment of natural wonder. And this lot, who were just over there, they didn't want to bloody swim just over there to have a look. What were they like? I mean, that's frustrating. It is, because I think use life while you can.
But you say in the book, I think about them quite a lot, those people. I just imagine you every day thinking about those people.
But they're a good motivator, I think, for me, because they remind me if I'm somewhere, and I have used it. I think my wife used it once when I was, oh God, have we got to climb that hill in Greece when I was being slightly lazy, and she just said, those guys in the motorway. Oh, yeah, you're right, let's go.
We're all going to be saying it now. This is a question I really like from Luke, which should be up on the screen now.
Whoa. Deep, Luke. Which individual you've met on your travels? You live your life. I mean, recently, I don't even know his name. But he's somebody I write about in the book. And it's strange, this book, it evolved in the sense that as I started thinking about it, as it started to form up, as words started to go down on the page, I started thinking more about experiences I'd had in the last decade and a bit. And I started remembering and thinking and reminding myself about people I'd met who had had a real impact on me and what I had learnt about them. Perhaps I should have been looking back more to remind myself about more often. And there was one guy who said something short, snappy, profound for me when I was in Varanasi in India, one of the holiest cities on planet Earth, a city so ancient it's almost impossible for us to comprehend, where life has been lived beautifully, fundamentally, grittily for centuries, where bodies are still burnt on the ghats by the holy river Ganges, and then the ashes are tipped into the water. And I sat down next to a young Indian sadhu there who just pointed out to me with a few words the importance of living in the moment. And he was somebody who he's had a really significant impact on me at the time. Then I forgot for a while, and then the privilege of writing this book has reminded me for many a month now. And what he told me, I'm trying to live my life in a slightly better way, quite frankly. And the why is because it mattered and resonated with me. I was getting a bit grumpy and lost and moaning about the lockdown and worrying about what was going to happen in the future. And I needed that reminder that to go for a walk with my dogs and to play football with my son is the most beautiful and extraordinary thing that I can do and a human can frankly do. And I need to cherish and relish that more. So that's why.
And it was very powerful that he said to you, just be. Just be. Would you like another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm loving this. I haven't got anywhere to go, I don't think. We have got a bottle of champagne back here.
Is there a place you would never want to go back to?
That's a really tricky one.
I'm sorry.
Anonymous as well. Yeah. Gosh. Which tourist board is that? There isn't, there are places, I think that the reason why is because from the start of the journeys I've been doing for TV, we've tried to work in these two elements, this light and the shade, the joy and definitely the bloody problems we're facing. But because of that, it makes everywhere and everything interesting in some way. So even in places that are tricky, there is a fundamental, I think, importance in being there and capturing the story there and learning about it and in sharing that. So there isn't, the only places I wouldn't want to go back to, I suppose, are places that are boring, but I would really struggle to think of anywhere that I haven't found some interest. I'm racking my brains now. And no, I struggle, I suppose, a little bit more in countries where I think, or in places where I think there is too much exploitation. In some places in the Gulf, I've felt slightly horrified by almost the suffering of the workers who've come from places like Bangladesh and the Philippines, and I've felt upset about that. But I still think it's important to be there and film, and I still think people are living meaningful, purposeful lives there. So no, there is nowhere I wouldn't want to go back to, and there is still a long list of places I would love to visit if possible.
Okay, thank you, Anonymous. I was struck by something in your book where you talk about, you're having a conversation with a crew member, and I think he or she they've had a few drinks, and they comment on your presenting style. They say something like, you want to be liked too much. And this is a bit of what I'm going to call a manta ray thing for you. But it bothers you.
That I dwell on.
Yeah, but it would bother me, understandably, because it's sort of criticism, and how do you silence that? It's hard enough to silence that voice anyway, and then you're hearing it from a colleague. How do you deal with internal criticism?
Oh, very badly, I would say. I don't even think I really deal with it. I dwell and mull and not self-critique, it's much more than that. Self-flagellate, I would say. Quite often deserved, though. Perhaps slightly too much. I deal with it badly, I think. But that particular comment, I think I dealt with better than most. Because I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable enough to put it in the book otherwise. But I think he was wrong about the context, but right to a certain degree about the fact I do like it. He was thinking, I've given him a gender now, haven't I? So it could only be. Anyway, I hadn't even said that. This person, there was a bit of drinking involved, as you did say. And it's tough on the team. Because I'm chatting away for ages with people, and they're filming for hour after hour in some situations, and I'm nattering away as if I haven't got a care in the world. But some people, and in this case, this person thought it was because I wanted people to like me, and that was not the case in those situations. It might be generally, but it wasn't the case in those situations. When I'm talking to people on camera, I am trying to hear their bloody story, and I genuinely want to learn about them, and so we collectively will care about them more as a result. And I don't want to just pitch up, milk them for a little bit of a tale, how their village was burned down and their family were all massacred, and then move on. That does happen in telly and the media and journalism. Of course it does. And I'm keen to find out a little bit more, humanize them, so people watching will realize they are us collectively. It could be me, you, or anyone else here in a different set of circumstances. So that was the reason in that situation. Don't deal with it very badly. Have tried over the years, I suppose, to use a few little techniques if I'm self-critiquing. And one of the ones I use, which you're very welcome to give a try if you want to, if you've got the same problem, is I try and turn any self-criticism I put it in the voice of a friend, and imagine a friend saying it. Would a friend, because my friends would say anything to me, I think, and that's great, but would they say this to me? And if so, how would they say it to me? And I sometimes add a nickname into it, like mates call me Reevey sometimes, so it softens the blow and turns it from a really harsh criticism to perhaps something a bit more constructive.
And that's interesting, because in some ways, as you say, that's possibly your strength. Some would say, I would say, I think we'd all say, as a presenter, is that you're not like the traditional idea of a travel presenter or a documentary maker, because you're having a conversation. You're not sort of commenting in a detached way. Basically, I'm standing up for you.
Yeah, well, that's very kind. I wish you'd been there. Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I'm talking with somebody on camera, you're all in intelligent TV viewership, as it were. But it's obviously hard for people watching to fully understand all of the mechanics that are involved in it and the moving parts generally. I mean, we might have filmed for 15 minutes with somebody or 5 hours. We don't always go into a situation knowing exactly how it's going to play out or exactly what they're going to say. And I'm navigating a conversation of somebody's life while being very conscious of where everybody is, where Jonathan or Craig or Ruth or anyone else who's sometimes filming me is standing, what position they're in, what shot angle they've got. I've got to be conscious of them, conscious of where the person is. I've got to have a sort of sixth sense with the rest of my gang about what they're trying to do, whether somebody else is getting another shot as a cutaway editing shot of something that's happening over here, or whether we need to be filming this person's hands because they're doing that. So there's a lot of thoughts going on, but the vast majority of my brain is listening to what they're saying. And I think that is something we could all sometimes do a little bit more of. I've had to learn how to do it. People in other parts of the planet can tell when you are not bloody listening. Just because I don't speak the language, they know whether I'm listening or not. So I'm not sort of loafing around checking emails while they're talking in Portuguese or whatever in Mozambique or whatever to me or the camera. I'm listening, totally focused on them and trying to attempt to understand through body language what's going on.
And you've said as well, you're very keen to, I suppose, manage expectations as well when you go into those areas. So you're not over-promising, because there is that danger as well, isn't there?
Oh, there is, yeah.
But
yes.
There was something that somebody said which I thought was really powerful. And it was essentially saying how we can't be trusted.
Outsiders.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about no white man works for free.
That's it.
Yeah, that was a proper moment for me. We were in the Colombian jungle in a very remote community, traveling around the equator. I mean, it's a good few years back. And we pitched up in this indigenous community who hadn't seen an outsider for decades and decades. They'd never seen anything like us. But they'd heard stories, and there's me giving the spiel to the elders in the huge hut about how we're here to tell their story, we're here to tell your story, and we're hoping that it will help protect you from the miners and loggers who are coming. And I said, and it was true, but it maybe was a bit too much of a line that I trotted out, and an elder at the back said, "Yeah, but why are you really here? No white man works for free." And he looked into my bloody soul. He really did. And I had to go, fair enough. You're right. We are being paid to be here. And it was a very difficult situation, not because they were threatening us at all, but because we needed their permission to be allowed to stay, and we hoped to film with them, and we genuinely thought what we were doing was a good thing. But how do you communicate that to people who cannot know whether to trust you or not, quite understandably? So they allowed us to stay. I mean, I went from being a little bit to being, okay, I haven't shown quite enough focus and respect here. And I have always, in those moments since I think I've raised my moral game, if you like, to be more respectful of not just the people I'm talking to in a situation like that, but the elderly gentleman at the back, the ladies who are sitting over there, who in most indigenous cultures, they will chime in with their critique of who this, this guy. But yeah, it was a moment where we were confronted with the reality of what we were doing. And you're absolutely right, we have to, and I'm proud actually of the way we honestly tell people, look, this is not going to transform things, I don't think. And it's difficult because sometimes we have taken risks to get to the point we're talking to them, but I will still say to them, you don't have to do this, we're not forcing you to, here's what's going to happen, here's what might happen, here's where this will be shown. If they don't understand TV in any sense or what it is or where it might be shown, we will make sure there is somebody there who can help and be a guide for them. And I will say, look, I think this is just going to be a ripple on a pond. I don't think it will transform your situation. But what is astonishing, and it's so humbling to be here now and to have been in these situations where people risk their lives to talk to me and our crew for you, to have their story heard by the outside world. I've been in that situation 12 times where I know people are risking life or certainly limb and often life to do it. It's an incredible thing. And even when the situation's explained, I can't think of a single time ever when they have not wanted to do it. They are so eager to have their story shared and told, because for us, collectively, we want our voices out there. And yeah, I mean, whether you're a young teenage kid who feels lost, or whether you're the Pedrini tribe in Colombia or the Chin people in Burma, you want your fellow human beings to know you exist and you matter.
Well, it's something that comes over a lot in your book, which is Journeys to Impossible Places. It's so brilliant. Can I share something? We're going to have to go quite soon because security are going to chuck us out. Can I share one of my favourite bits in the book with you?
Delighted. Intrigued.
It's just a small thing, and it's an extract from a letter you write to your son, Jake. And I'm going already, so I'll try and get through this, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
Can I put the context?
Please do.
So I wasn't sure about putting this in, but Jake said it's okay, and it's a very personal letter I wrote while admittedly a little bit drunk in Varanasi, the holy city in India that I've just told you about, where I met the sadhu who, told me something that really, really got me. And I'd also had a couple of other experiences that day in the same city, which had been really moving for me. And I had a bit of a moment with a little bit of whiskey and a little feeling that I needed to jot something down for my lad. And so I wrote him a letter that I've put in this book.
Jake, I'm not reading the whole thing, I'm reading an extract.
No. Well, we probably haven't got enough time.
Okay. Jake, whether I'm around or not, I'm sure you'll walk your own path in life. Forgive me for making just a few notes and suggestions for the road. Dance like a wild thing. I've always been too proud, embarrassed, and self-conscious to dance in public. I worried too much about what people would think. I regret it hugely. Try to avoid making my mistake. Dance yourself silly. Nobody cares. Most people I've met find happiness through discovering their purpose and meaning. Try to find yours. It can be almost anything, but life is so often a challenging maze. Love whatever you are and whoever you are. Just be.
Thank you.
So lovely.
Quite nerve-wracking for me. It's quite nerve-wracking putting that out there and not knowing, how people will react. Whether
We're all crying, basically. Thank you.
Pretentious, teletype,
We're going to have to wrap up. I've so loved talking to you.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
And this book is brilliant, and I so think you'll love it. Journeys to Impossible Places. I'm a huge fan. We're all huge fans. We're all crying. Thank you so much, Simon Reeve.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really touched. Thank you. And thank you so much for coming out. Oh. Thank you. Can I give you a clap now? Come on. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We have to go.
Thank you so much. Oh, we've got to go.
All right, okay.
We're
It's a
ending this
sudden
really
end.
unprofessionally.
Exit stage
We're
right
meant to
as
get
well.
off.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you for being here. It's been an absolute honour. Thank you, guys.